We will now quickly move on to our second conversation today, which is on life and work of distinguished acharyas of Nalanda. I request the following panelists to please come on stage. The moderator for this session is Lopin Luangten Gyatso, President, College of Language and Cultural Studies from the Royal University of Bhutan. The speakers for this session are Professor Bimlendra Kumar, Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies, Banaras Hindu University. Venerable Professor Kaveri Gill, Senior Fellow at the Center for Excellence in Himalayan Studies at the Shiv Nadar University, India. And Dr. Sharda Paudel, Associate Professor, Faculty of Buddhist Studies from Lumbini Buddhist University, Nepal.
Distinguished guests, participants, delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, I know this session stands between you and the lunch. Any delay would be a delay to fulfilling the need of your body. So I think, I'm given this instruction that there will be no Q&A in the interest of time, unless you want to skip or delay your lunch. But nevertheless, it's my great privilege to welcome you all. And we have, we are honored to have three distinguished scholar panelists who will deeply engage, on the title, Life and Works of Distinguished Acharyas of Nalanda. I think the earlier session we talked about the historical evolution, the philosophical contributions, and the institutional framework. This session basically will look at the persons, the luminaries, the great figures of Nalanda. We have here Professor, if I mispronounce your name, please forgive me, Bimalendra Kumarji. He is a professor of Pali and Buddhist Studies, presently a visiting professor at the Lumbini Buddhist University. Next, we have Venerable Kaveri Gilji, who is a senior fellow at the Center of Excellence in Himalayan Studies, Shiv Nadar Institute of Eminence, Delhi. And we also have Professor Sharda Paudel, Faculty of Buddhist Studies, Lumbini Buddhist University, Nepal. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the three distinguished panelists. If the intellectual and the spiritual heritage of Nalanda represents one of the most remarkable achievements in the history of Buddhist scholarship and human civilization. For hundreds of, for several centuries, Nalanda served as a vibrant center for learning, where scholars from across Asia gathered to learn, study philosophy, medicine, ethics, and a wide range of disciplines. The distinguished acharyas, we know, personalities, luminaries like Nagarjuna, Vasubandhu, Dharmakirti, Chandrakirti, and many more, did not only preserve Buddhist, teachings. They engaged in profound, intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and deep contemplative practices, shaping Buddhist thoughts and practices across Asia, including the larger Himalayan region. And what has always been the defining character of Nalanda, is its scientific rigor, scientific spirit, scientific temper of critical and objective analysis, inquiry. In the earlier session, we heard this word time and again. The great masters of Nalanda encourage students not just to believe blindly, but to examine them through the instruments of logic, reasoning, and most importantly, first-person self-inquiry through one's experience. So, what has really in today's this session on life and the work of distinguished personalities, distinguished scholars of Acharyas of Nalanda, offers us this unique opportunity to revisit their lives and their contribution. So, in this section, I think we'll have 3 rounds. The first round, I think I will request the panelists to give their self-reflection on the topic, the life and work of the distinguished, Acharyas of Nalanda. So maybe I'll give you about 1 to 2 minutes just to introduce, what your reflection on the topic.
So thank you very much, Mr. Anwar. So thank you very much. So thank you very much. There were 17 great Nalanda Acharyas. They are also called as Nalanda adept scholars who disseminated the teachings of the Buddha in Tibet. And they are the glorious scholars in the sense that they disseminated the thoughts of the teachings of the Buddha in Tibet. So if you summarize all these things, that there are the logic as well as epistemology, which were propounded by our Nalanda teachers, especially if you remember the works of our Acharya Santidev or Santa Rakshit, who gave a more emphasis that do not accept the things, whatever it comes to you, but accept the things with the common sense as well as investigations. And in that sense, the logic developed from our Acharyas, from the Nalanda. Another aspect related with our Nalanda scholars or the contributions of our teachers of Nalanda, that Panch Mahavidyas, that is the Hetu Vidya, Sabda Vidya, Pramana Vidya, Silpa Vidya, Chikitsa Vidya, as well as Adhyatma Vidya. These 5 Vidyas which were disseminated from the Nalanda. And if you consider all the contributions of the Nalanda teachers, we can say that this is not the contribution that is the Nalanda intellectual traditions which developed from our Nalanda and which is still continuing in Tibet and other parts of the country also.
Okay.
And the scholars like Acharya Santidev, who developed the concept of secular ethics in the text of Bodhicharya Avatar. And the most contribution of our contributions of our Nalanda teachers was that method of the debate as well as Sambad, that is the Vad and Sambad, which was developed by the Nalanda tradition teachers or intellectual traditions of the Nalanda, that is still existing in our Tibet and other parts of the country. So these are some of the things which were developed by our Nalanda intellectual traditions. And the other things which we are, that how...
Yeah, we'll get to those details
yes,
in the next round.
Thank you.
So may I invite Professor? I think with this introduction round, we now move on to the second round, which is diving a little deeper. Today, the great, we know the great acharyas of Nalanda were far more, than scholars. They embodied a profound union of, intellectual rigor and spiritual realization. Masters such as, Nagarjuna and Shanta Rakshita, Atisha, they were responsible for shaping the Asia's, intellectual and spiritual landscape through debate, through cross-cultural exchange and the establishment of enduring traditions, their legacy serving as both custodians of knowledge and bridges between civilizations, right? I come to Professor Bimalendra Kumarji. How can the scholarship of Nalanda, acharyas be understood as a model of integrated, knowledge, where intellectual rigor and spiritual insight, are mutually reinforcing each other?
So when we are considering the Acharya Nagarjuna, Bhav Vivek or Buddha Palit or as well as Acharya Chandrakirti, we see that how the thoughts of Madhyamik developed, and we summarize all the thoughts related with the Madhyamik, that there are three aspects, that is the Pratyata, Nisvabhavata, as well as Paraspar Ashrayata. So these three aspects developed out of the Madhyamik thought, and out of these three thoughts, the last one, Paraspar Ashrayata, it became more powerful thought among the Nalanda scholars. And this Paraspar Ashrayata has also four aspects. If you see that mutual dependence, coexistence, cooperation, as well as co-enjoyment. These are the four aspects. And whenever these four aspects are related with the Paraspar Ashrayata, how the thoughts related with the concept of well-being among the humanism or humanity can be developed. So these was one of the aspects related with our earlier acharyas of the Madhyamik. As well as when we come to the Santarakshita, we see that how the logic and precision was developed. And Acharya Santidev, when he composed the text Bodhicharjavatar, he gave the concept of how we can develop or awaken our consciousness. And in that way, he gave the two aspects of this Bodhichitta, Paramartha Bodhichitta, as well as Samvriti Bodhichitta. And how the emptiness or sunyata can be achieved by knowing that all things are subject to suffering, or all the states are subject to suffering, as well as impermanence and subject to soulless. So this Paramartha Bodhichitta can be attained only by knowing the nature of the reality, as well as other aspects related with our Samvriti Bodhichitta, that how the karma can be developed by our development of sunyata. So Acharya Santideva also says that this Paramartha Bodhichitta as well as Samvriti Bodhichitta, they are interdependent. As well as one cannot prevail without the absence of others. So Karuna cannot be achieved without the knowledge of the emptiness, or knowing the all things are subject to impermanence, suffering, and soulless. So this was the main contribution of Acharya Santideva. And whenever we are coming to the later Acharyas of Santideva, of our Nalanda, we also see that how the method of the debate which was developed in Nalanda, and it is still continuing in Tibet also, and how the concept of this Purva Paksha as well as Uttara Paksha, the method of debate was only to know the nature of the reality, that how one can know the nature of the reality, in which there are two sides where the Uttara Paksha as well as Purva Paksha, they present themselves, and there are one Madhyasth also, and that Madhyasth or moderator gives the questions as well as he gives the challenges to some of the questions to Purva Paksha as well as Uttara Paksha, and then he tries to give the nature of the reality, that how it can be achieved. The most important thing of this our method of debate is the sahabhagita, that how all persons, whether it is in Purva Paksha or Uttara Paksha as well as Madhyasth, and all the common audience as well as the judges, how they are united and they are devoted to know the nature of the reality as the knowledge, how it comes to be. So these are some of the things, and the Mahavidyas which were developed by the later acharyas of our Nalanda. So they were also developed by our, that is the Hetu Vidya, Sabda Vidya, Pramana Vidya, Silpa Vidya, Chikitsa Vidya, and Adhyatma Vidya. These Vidyas were developed and they became there were also minor sciences also. And these Vidyas were also became the curriculum for the monastic, our settlements. And how they developed these Vidyas and they purified their internal consciousness. So these are the main our contributions of our these things. And whenever we talk about the Acharya Santidev, he gave the concept of secular ethics. Here, secular ethics is in the sense of that how we can give respect to other religions. And this concept, we go through the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, then how Sat Aparihaniya Sutta. Buddha talks about that how this our secular ethics can be developed. So this secular ethics can be achieved by respecting to other religions, having our common sense as well as a scientific investigation, as well as a concept of universal religion. So these were some of the things which were developed by our Nalanda Acharyas.
Thank you. I think you gave a very candid and very clear explanation, response to my question. Thank you, Professor. Now, among the great masters, I understand Professor Kaveri Gilji studied, I think, Atisha for this, presentation. And we know that the great masters of Nalanda's legacy, I think Atisha stands out as a pivotal figure when it comes to bridging classical Indian Buddhism and its flourishing in Tibet. So trained in the rich traditions of Nalanda and Vikramashila, here, we heard the university Vikramashila, I think, Atisha was also associated with that. He united deep philosophical insight with compassion, and through this journey to Tibet and works such as the lamp for, the path to enlightenment, he offered a clear and structured path grounded in bodhicitta, ethics, and wisdom, shaping Tibetan Buddhism in enduring ways. How, my question to you, Professor Kaveri, how did Atisha's training in the Nalanda tradition, particularly in its integration, of rigorous logical analysis and compassionate practice, shape his articulation of bodhicitta and his structured presentation of the path in the lamp for the path to enlightenment, as well as his formulation of Buddhist teachings in Tibet?
Thank you so much, Lopenla. It's so difficult to separate the life of the great master Atisha. So I just want to say here that through sharing a bit of his life story, what we take away. So he was born in the 11th century at a very fecund and unique time for Buddhism in East Asia. And we heard Sri Abhijit Haldarji talk about Dharma Setu and the bridge to the Pacific today. But if you think of the great master Atisha, the Pala dynasty was there. And he connects, so Bengal was at the crossroads of the international trade route connecting Assam, Myanmar, and further, of course, the whole of East Asia. And it connected with the Buddhist sites in those days, what is called the kingdom of Magadh, today Vajras and Bodh Gaya. And so the Bay of Bengal was also central to the maritime Buddhist Asia, and on this direct route. And Master Atisha, who is Bengali, he's born in present-day Bangladesh. He then goes, as you say, he is a child prodigy because by age 6, he's able to distinguish between Buddhist and non-Buddhist tenets. By 15, he could defeat others in debate. And then I won't go into the details, but essentially to say that he became ordained in the Mahasamgika ordination lineage at 29 years in Bodh Gaya, where he gets the ordination name Dipankara Srijana. And he studied with 157 teachers. He then goes to present-day Indonesia to study with the great master Serlingpa, who is a follower of the Yogacara tradition. And he himself, being a holder of the Madhyamika view, still doesn't have the arrogance, the lack of self-understanding, that he studies for 12 years with him about bodhicitta. And forever after, out of his 157 teachers, he kept Lama Serlingpa on the crown of his head because he taught him bodhicitta, or what today there'll be a question on that. So the two lineage of the sevenfold cause and effect, and equalizing and exchanging self and other. As I think Dadul Rinpoche mentioned, the Arya Sangha and Arya Nagarjuna, they come down from both of them. And there is a direct lineage to Buddha Shakyamuni. And the confluence of these lineages is held by the great master Atisha. And then he comes back, Lopenla, as you say, he comes back from Indonesia, perilous journey. There was no Indigo flight like today. And then he sets off for Vikramshila, and he's related, he becomes vice chancellor. And then at the age of, it's disputed whether 60 or before 60, but he sets off to Tibet at that age, across the snowy Himalayas, Bengali, used to that climate of Bengal and fish and everything. And then he sets off there. Why? To practice, I would say, to carry out the activities of a great, great bodhisattva, if not Buddha. So I would say when I look at the life story, and this is one example of the Nalanda masters, so I learned today from His Eminence Rinpoche that he put Master Atisha in the category of a Mahasiddh. Atisha was everything. He was a scholar, he was a great practitioner of Vinaya. Every time he had broken his Vinaya, he got off his horse and he carried out purification. He was a great, of course, holder of the lineages of bodhicitta. He had mastered, he wrote, as you said, the Great Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment for Tibetans. Why? Because he was supposed to come back to Nalanda University. They wanted him back, but there was war broke out. He couldn't come back, but he sent them this one text, which basically takes to the masses how to practice the entire 84,000 teachings of the Buddha in one short text, which demonstrates his mastery over Madhyamika philosophy, as my previous speaker was saying. So these are the kind of cosmopolitan, great, great beings that studied in Nalanda. And I think just his life story is enough to make us feel so joyed. And to take it as an example for, as the first panel speaker said, not just theory and study, but actually for practice in our lives as the most sophisticated possibilities of the human mind. And today when people are being bombed and everything, and humanism itself is dying out, what a privilege to even talk about such a being. And there were many in Nalanda. They spoke earlier, Jason Naropa was the northern gatekeeper, Palga Rinpoche mentioned him, and there were just so many. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Kaveri. Again, another candid response, and I'm sure this would have enlightened the audience here, looking at the luminaries in the person of Atisha and how he transported Buddhism across the Himalayan region. I think one of the, if I may use Rinpoche's words, I think one of the unique characteristics of Nalanda was that it was an intellectual hub responsible for taking Buddhism across the borders. That marks the distinction or the departure from rest of the learning centers. So the legacy of Nalanda lies not only in the scholarly depth, but in its wide influence across Asia, such as I'm told that Professor Paudilji studied Kamalashila, right? So masters like Kamalashila carried its philosophical and contemplative traditions into new contextual, cultural context, especially in Tibet, embodying a seamless integration of intellectual rigor, meditation, and cross-cultural exchange. My question to transported to Tibet and how it got rooted, and then also you talked about, Kamalashila's role in, how he contributed further enhancing the path of liberation and, the process of enlightenment. With this, we come to the final round. I would like to, again, come back to the three scholar panelists to give your final comments on how can modern institutions learn from the Nalanda tradition in cultivating transformative education and leadership, because in the age of AI, I think the future will belong not just to the most knowledgeable, but to the most grounded, resilient, ethical, and self-aware. This is what is needed today in a fast, globalizing world where often the world is characterized by disruptions, chaos, and imbalance. We see the earlier speakers talked about the inadequacy of modern education. We are teaching the brain, we know intellectually, but the bridge between the head and the heart is very much missing. How can we, use this Nalanda tradition? Coming back to, Madam's question, how can we walk the path? How can we give wings to the ideas, the values? How can we make it, doable? So I can give you maybe two minutes, and that will bring us to lunch. Good news.
Thank you very much, Lopanji. Regarding the education, based upon the Nalanda intellectual tradition, social, ethical, emotion, and learning, learning, which has been developed by our His Holiness Dalai Lama, and which has become very much popular. And there are three aspects here: social, ethical, emotion. There are three aspects. How can we learn all these things? Whenever we are talking about the social, we have to see that how we can live in harmony and in a community also. And based upon the teachers, we can see that how a person can live in the community. And based upon the acharyas of Madhyavic thought, if you go through the Acharya Nagarjuna or Buddhapalit or Chandrakirti, we can see that how a person can live in community and how he can bring the peace and harmony. Whenever we come to the ethics, we can take the considerations of Acharya Shantidev Bodhicharya Avatar, whether he gives the instruction that how we can develop our bodhicitta, how we can awaken our consciousness. And for that, Paramartha Bodhicitta as well as Samriti Bodhicitta, these two types of awakening of consciousness have been given. So there is a need of learning of all these things based upon the moral ethics which have been given as instructions in the Bodhicharya Avatar's text of Acharya Shantidev. Whenever we comes to our emotions, there are beautiful emotions also and there are wrong emotions also. His Holiness Dalai Lama talks about that how we can control our wrong emotions. So based upon the Abhidharma traditions, we are having the 25 types of beautiful emotions. They are called as Sobhan Chetasikas. And there are 14 types of Akusal Chetasikas. They are called as immoral psychic factors. So how we can control our immoral psychic factors with the help of our beautiful emotions or the psychic factors which are 25 in number. So based upon these beautiful, that is the Karuna, Maitri, these are the two types of Birati Chetsikas which have been developed. So His Holiness Dalai Lama says that with these two Birati, that is the Pragya and Maitri, we can control our wrong emotions, that is the wrong psychic factors, which are always associated with our consciousness. So these learning can be developed here in social, ethical, emotions learning. So there is a need of introducing this type of learning in schools and colleges. And recently in the college, in the schools of our Delhi, this seal learning has been introduced by our His Holiness Dalai Lama few years back. And it has been observed that the result of our students of the 10 and the 12th standard, they have become more beautiful than the previous years. And in that way, there is a need of that things. And there is another instructions which have been given by our Nalanda intellectual traditions, that how we can develop the Sahabhagita, which is one of the factor of our debate, that is the Vad or Sambad. And in the Vad or Sambad, whenever we are talking about Sahabhagita, there are 4 stages here, like Swakoromi, that I agree with the proposers as well as defenders also. And then the second aspect is Katham, that in what sense or Kim Artham, that in what sense and in what is that thing. And the third aspect is called as Hetu Asiddham, that cause has or reasoning has not been established. And the fourth is the Abhyapti. Abhyapti is in the sense of none or not perversion. So these are the 4 aspects related with our learning stages in the schools and the colleges. If you develop all these, that method of debate, as well as the Sahabhagita, that how all the learners as well as proposers and defenders, mediators or moderators, and the judges or the teachers, how they can develop a sense of Sahabhagita here. All are responsible for getting a state of nature of the reality, that what and how the knowledge can be achieved by all these things. Okay. So these can be introduced in the schools, colleges, as well as the centers of the higher educations also. Then we can develop our, in the age of our AI, how AI, we have to be very much cautious also. Whenever we are talking about the ethics, we have to take materials from the AI, but we have to be very much careful that whether they are going to destruct our emotions or not. So okay. We have to be very much careful related with the materials what we get through the AI.
Okay, thank you, Professor Bimalendra. I get to understand that you are proposing a paradigm shift in the way we educate our, minds. And in the age of AI, it's not the technology per se that determines, for example, if you look at a knife, the sharper the knife, better it is. But it's not in the discretion of the knife itself, whether to chop vegetables or chop somebody's head. It's the hand that holds the knife that needs to be educated. So I think in the AI age, AI can be an intelligent assistant, but we cannot definitely be dominated by AI, and therefore the human intelligence has to supersede the artificial intelligence. This is what I get to hear from you. Now, can I move on to the